I rushed through the elegant dining room of Rosewood Manor, clutching a wrapped gift, my heart pounding, 40 minutes late because of a work emergency. The private room door stood open. My family sat around a cleared table, dessert plates empty, champagne glasses drained. Mom's arms were crossed. Dad wouldn't look at me. My younger sister smirked. Then Mom slid a folded paper across the white tablecloth. I opened it with shaking hands. An itemized restaurant bill, $2,820, made out to my name. The numbers blurred in front of my eyes as I stared at the bill. My throat went dry. This couldn't be real. "You're late again," Mom said, her voice cold enough to freeze water. "We had to order without you. Since you couldn't be bothered to show up on time for your own parents' milestone anniversary, you can pay for everyone." I looked up from the paper, scanning the faces around the table. 12 people had eaten tonight. Mom, Dad, my sister Jessica, her husband Brandon, their 2 kids, Aunt Helen, Uncle Frank, their adult son Derek, and my grandmother Dorothy. Everyone was staring at me. "Mom, I texted you," I said, pulling out my phone with trembling fingers. The client presentation ran over. I left as soon as I could. I was only 40 minutes late. "Excuses," Jessica said, examining her manicured nails. "Always work with you, Maggie. We're family. We should come first." I scrolled frantically through my messages, holding the phone out to show the text I'd sent 2 hours ago explaining the delay. Mom waved it away without even glancing at the screen. "Excuses don't change the fact that we waited and waited, and you never showed," she said. "You make good money at that fancy marketing job. You can afford it." My mind started racing backward through time like a movie reel on rewind. Jessica's baby shower last spring, where somehow I got stuck with the $850 venue bill. Dad's birthday dinner in March, $630 that appeared on my credit card without my knowledge until the statement arrived. Mom's retirement party 2 years ago, $1,200 that I'd been guilted into covering because you have the best job, sweetheart. Easter brunch, $400. Last Thanksgiving, when I supposedly offered to cover everything, $900 I definitely didn't volunteer for. The realization hit me like jumping into a frozen lake. I'd been subsidizing every single family celebration for years. Every holiday, every birthday, every anniversary, every gathering. My hands started shaking as I did quick mental math. Over $15,000 in just the past 2 years alone. Probably more if I went back further. "Maggie, come on," Brandon said, leaning back in his chair with an easy smile. "You don't have kids. You don't have a mortgage like Jessica and I do. You've got all that disposable income just sitting there." Jessica leaned forward, her smile sharp and mean. "Yeah. What else are you going to spend it on? Another vacation you take alone? Designer purses? At least this way, the money stays in the family where it belongs." Aunt Helen nodded vigorously. "Your sister has 2 children to feed and clothe. You should be helping family, Maggie. That's what family does." I looked desperately at my father, silently begging him to say something, to defend me, to acknowledge that this wasn't right. Dad cleared his throat, shifted in his seat, and looked away. He said nothing. He always said nothing. Grandmother Dorothy, sitting at the far end of the table, reached over and touched my hand gently. Her fingers were warm, but her voice was quiet, almost apologetic. "Just pay it, dear. Don't cause a scene. It's not worth the fight." The weight of their expectations pressed down on my shoulders like a physical force. I'd always been the successful one in the family, the one who'd gone to college, who'd gotten the good job at the marketing firm, who'd worked her way up to senior manager. I was 32, unmarried, no kids. Somehow, that had transformed me in their eyes from a person into a resource, a piggy bank, a never-ending fountain of money that existed solely for their convenience. I thought about my own finances, my $1,200 a month apartment, the student loans I was still paying off, $300 every month like clockwork. the retirement account I'd been desperately trying to build. The emergency fund I'd depleted last year when Jessica called crying about her car needing a new transmission, and I'd sent her $2,000 immediately because the kids need to get to school safely. Money I never saw again. Jessica pulled out her phone, not even bothering to look at me as she spoke. "While you're at it, Brandon's truck needs new tires. Could you Venmo me like $500? We're really stretched thin this month with the kids' activities and everything." The table went silent. Everyone turned to look at me expectantly, faces neutral, as if this was the most reasonable request in the world, as if I existed purely to fund their lives. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from a rage so pure and hot, it felt like swallowing fire. The bill crinkled in my grip. Jessica's phone buzzed on the table. The screen lit up with a text message preview, and from my angle I could see it clearly. "Did you get more money from your ATM sister? Lol." Time seemed to stop. ATM sister. The words burned into my brain. Before Jessica could grab her phone, I snatched it off the table. My sister lunged forward with a shriek. "Give that back right now!" But I was already scrolling, my heart hammering. Text thread with someone named Courtney. Months of messages. "Maggie's paying for dinner again. We're eating fancy tonight." My sister is such a sucker. Told her we needed help with groceries. She sent $300. We used it for concert tickets. LOL. She actually believed Brandon needs new tires. We're using the money for our weekend trip to the beach. Another thread with someone named Tiffany. Why work when I have a sister with a guilt complex? She'll pay for anything if I say it's for the kids, followed by laughing emojis. I kept scrolling, my vision tunneling. Photos of Jessica and Brandon at expensive steakhouses. Spa day selfies. Shopping bags from designer stores. All time-stamped after she'd called me crying about various emergencies. All purchased with money she'd claimed she desperately needed for bills and necessities. Brandon's face had gone completely white. "Jess, what did you do?" Jessica finally managed to yank her phone from my hands. "Those are private. You had no right." My voice came out deadly quiet. "You've been lying. There was no broken transmission last month, was there? No medical bills. No emergency vet visit for the dog." She clutched her phone to her chest, defensive. "We needed the money. For vacations. For concerts. For things you wanted but didn't need." I turned slowly to face my parents. Mom's face had gone tight, but her eyes held no remorse. Just irritation at being caught. "Did you know?" Barbara lifted her chin. "Jessica is struggling. She has children to support. You're single with a good income. You should be helping your sister." "Help?" My voice rose despite my best efforts to stay calm. "I've given over $15,000 in 2 years. For fake emergencies." While she's been laughing about it with her friends, calling me names. Thomas finally spoke, his tone dismissive. "Maggie, don't be so dramatic. It's just money." "Dramatic?" I turned to face him fully, and something in my expression made him lean back. "Dad, when was the last time you asked how I was doing? When was the last time anyone at this table asked about my life? My problems? My dreams? My hopes?" Silence. Complete and total silence. "Never," I answered my own question. "Because I'm not a person to you. I'm not your daughter. I'm not a sister. I'm a wallet with legs. An ATM you can withdraw from whenever you feel like it." Grandmother Dorothy spoke up softly. "Maggie makes a good point. This isn't right. This isn't how families should treat each other." Jessica whirled on her. "Stay out of this, Grandma. This doesn't concern you." Aunt Helen jumped into the fray, her voice shrill. "Maggie, family takes care of family. You're being incredibly selfish right now. Do you know how hard it is raising children these days?" "Selfish?" I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to my own ears. "I work 60-hour weeks. I skip meals because I'm too busy. I haven't taken a real vacation in 3 years because every time I save money, one of you has an emergency that magically requires exactly as much as I've managed to put away. I pulled up my banking app with shaking fingers, turned the screen to face them. See this? $2,300. That's my entire savings account. I'm 32 years old, and that's everything I have in the world, because I've been giving every spare penny to all of you. Jessica rolled her eyes dramatically. Oh, please, you make like $80,000 a year. Stop playing the victim. I make $72,000 before taxes, and I have $30,000 in student loans still, and my rent is $2,000 a month for a tiny one-bedroom apartment. Do the math, Jessica. I'm not rich. I'm barely getting by, because I keep funding your lifestyle. Brandon looked genuinely shocked, turning to his wife. Jess, you told me she was making 6 figures. You said she had plenty of money. Jessica's face flushed red. She probably is making that much. She's just lying to make us feel guilty. I picked up the restaurant bill from where I'd dropped it on the table. $2,820 for a dinner I didn't even eat. A celebration I'd rushed to attend. A family that saw me as nothing more than a source of money. Slowly, deliberately, I tore the bill in half. The ripping sound seemed impossibly loud in the quiet room. Then I tore it in quarters, then eighths. Then I kept tearing until the bill was nothing but confetti in my shaking hands. I let the pieces flutter down onto the white tablecloth like snow. I'm done. Mom stood up so fast her chair scraped backward. Her face was scarlet with rage. You will not disrespect us like this. We are your parents. No, Mom. You don't get to play the victim here. You all disrespected me. For years. You used me, manipulated me, lied to me, called me names behind my back. I grabbed my purse and the anniversary gift I'd brought. A custom photo album I'd spent weeks making, filled with 30 years of family memories. I'd painstakingly collected photos, arranged them chronologically, written captions, added decorative elements, hours and hours of work to celebrate their marriage. I looked at the wrapped package in my hands, almost left it on the table, then thought better of it and tucked it under my arm. They didn't deserve my effort, my time, my love. Maggie Lynn Hartford, if you walk out that door, don't come crawling back, Jessica shouted, half standing from her chair. I paused at the doorway and looked back at my sister. I won't need to, because I'm not your ATM anymore. I'm not anyone's ATM. I'm a human being who deserves respect, and clearly I won't find that here. I walked out. My legs felt shaky, but I kept moving. Through the private dining room, through the main restaurant where other families were enjoying their meals, laughing together, actually celebrating. The hostess at the front stand caught my arm as I passed. Miss, excuse me, there's the matter of the bill for the private room. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. But I looked her in the eye and said firmly, I wasn't present for the meal. I didn't order anything. The bill is not legally in my name. It was handed to me by family members, but I have no obligation to pay for food I didn't consume. You'll need to collect from the people who actually ate the dinner. I walked out into the cool evening air before she could respond. Behind me, I heard shouting erupt from the private room. Let them figure it out. Let them pay for their own meal for once. I made it to my car before the tears started. 3 days passed. 3 days of silence except for the constant buzzing of my phone, which I'd been ignoring. Finally, sitting in my apartment on Wednesday evening, I looked at the messages. Jessica, you're so dramatic. It was just a joke. Why are you being like this? Mom, you've hurt your father very deeply. He can't sleep. I hope you're happy with yourself. Aunt Helen, I'm ashamed to call you my niece. Family doesn't abandon family over money. Cousin Derek, why are you tearing the family apart? Everyone's upset because of you. Uncle Frank, your mother is crying every day. Is this really worth it? I blocked them all. Every single number, except Grandmother Dorothy's. With each blocked contact, I felt simultaneously lighter and more terrified. I'd never stood up to them before. Never. I'd been the good daughter, the helpful sister, the generous niece. Now I was the villain in their story, and the weight of their anger felt crushing. But underneath the fear, something else was growing. A tiny seed of freedom. I was at work on Thursday when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Miss Maggie Hartford? A professional male voice. Yes? This is James Patterson from Fraud Prevention at United Credit Bank. I'm calling because we've detected suspicious activity on a credit card account opened in your name. Are you currently making purchases in Miami, Florida? My blood turned to ice water. I'm in Chicago. I haven't opened any new credit cards. The application was submitted online 3 weeks ago. The card has been used extensively since then. The current balance is $8,400. The office around me seemed to tilt sideways. I didn't apply for that card. I didn't authorize any of those purchases. We're flagging this as identity theft, Miss Hartford. I need you to come to a branch today to file a formal report. Can you do that? I left work immediately, barely remembering to tell my assistant I had an emergency. The bank was only 6 blocks away, but the walk felt like miles. My mind was racing. $8,400. Who would do this? Who had access to my information? But I already knew. Deep in my gut, I knew. At the bank, a fraud prevention officer named Patricia led me to a small office. She pulled up the account on her computer, and my worst fears were confirmed. The signature on the physical signature card they'd required for the application looked like Jessica's handwriting. I'd seen her signature 1,000 times on birthday cards, Christmas cards, thank you notes. This was hers, the address listed on the account. Jessica's house on Maple Street. Patricia scrolled through the purchase history, and each line item felt like a knife between my ribs. Designer handbags from boutiques, expensive dinners at upscale restaurants, a 5-day stay at a beach resort in Miami, children's clothing from high-end stores, new electronics, jewelry, shoes. This is clearly identity theft, Patricia said gently, her eyes kind behind her glasses. We'll void all the charges, and you won't be responsible for any of this debt. But you need to file a police report. Without that, we can't complete the fraud investigation. My sister did this. Patricia nodded slowly, like she'd heard this story before. Family fraud is unfortunately more common than most people realize. I'm very sorry you're going through this. The police station was another blur. The officer taking my statement was a middle-aged woman named Sandra, with tired eyes and a patient manner. Identity theft is a serious crime, Sandra explained as she typed my statement. With the evidence from the bank showing the signature and the shipping address, we have solid grounds for charges. But I need to ask you directly, are you willing to press criminal charges against your sister? My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Pressing charges meant Jessica could be arrested, could face jail time, could have a criminal record. Her kids could grow up visiting their mother in prison. But then, I thought about the text messages, the lies, the years of manipulation, the fact that while I was struggling to build an emergency fund, she was buying designer purses with my credit. Yes, I heard myself say, I'll press charges. When I got home that evening, there was a voicemail from an unknown number. I played it on speaker while making tea I didn't really want. Brandon's voice. Maggie, please. Jessica is panicking. She's terrified. She said she only meant to borrow the money. She was going to pay you back, I swear. Please don't do this. Think about your niece and nephew. They need their mother. Please. I deleted it, made my tea, stared at the wall. Another voicemail arrived. My father's voice this time strained and tight. Maggie, I'm begging you to reconsider. This will destroy our entire family. Is money really worth it? We can figure out a payment plan. We can work this out. Please, sweetheart, please. The word sweetheart, after everything that had happened, made me want to throw my phone across the room. I called the only person I trusted. Grandmother Dorothy answered on the second ring. Maggie, darling, I heard about what Jessica did. I'm so sorry. Grandma, everyone's calling me. They're all acting like I'm the one who did something wrong. You're not, Dorothy said firmly. You're the victim. They want you to feel guilty so you'll back down. That's manipulation, honey. I don't know if I can do this. Pressing charges against my own sister. Sometimes love means boundaries. And sometimes it means consequences. Jessica made choices, illegal choices. You're not responsible for protecting her from the results of her own actions. We talked for an hour. By the end, I felt marginally steadier. That night, I did something I should have done years ago. I pulled my credit report from all 3 major bureaus. The reports came through my email within minutes, and as I read them, my apartment seemed to spin around me. A personal loan from 5 years ago, $12,000. I'd never received a penny of that money. The loan was in collections, destroying my credit score. An auto loan from 4 years ago. $23,000 for a car I'd never seen, never driven, never even knew existed. Both applications listed my social security number. Both used my parents' address as the residence. I'd been 27 when those loans were taken out. Fresh in my current job, excited about my future, naive enough to trust my family when they asked to borrow my social security card for tax purposes. They'd use my identity, my credit, my financial future, and they'd let those loans default, destroying the credit score I'd worked so hard to build. That's why I'd been denied for a mortgage last year when I tried to buy a small condo. I'd been devastated by the rejection, confused about why my application was declined. I'd assumed it was my student loans dragging me down, but it was this, fraud, from my own parents, from 5 years ago. I called the fraud hotline back, hands shaking so badly I could barely dial. Filed additional reports, changed all my account numbers, set up fraud alerts on everything. Then I called a lawyer. The attorney's office was in a downtown high-rise with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Caroline Morrison was in her early 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that immediately made me feel like I was in capable hands. She reviewed everything I brought. The police reports, the credit reports, the bank statements, the text messages I'd screenshotted from Jessica's phone. Every piece of evidence I'd gathered over the past week. This is extensive fraud, Caroline said, leaning back in her leather chair. You have an excellent case. Multiple perpetrators, sustained pattern of behavior, substantial financial damage. But I need to warn you about something. What? This is going to get uglier before it gets better. Family fraud cases always do. They'll try everything to make you back down. Manipulation, guilt, flying monkeys. Flying monkeys? Other family members who'll attack you on their behalf. You'll be painted as the villain who's destroying the family. Prepare yourself for that psychological warfare. I thought about the voicemails and messages I'd already received. That's already happening. Caroline nodded. Then you know what to expect. The question is, are you prepared to see this through? Because once we start this process, there's no going back. I looked down at my hands. 32 years old and I'd never stood up for myself. Never drawn a line. Never said no, and meant it. I'm ready. Let's fight. Caroline smiled slightly. Good. First thing, we need to pull a comprehensive credit report and check for any other fraudulent accounts. If they did this twice, they might have done it more. The comprehensive report arrived the next day. My stomach turned as I read it. 2 additional credit cards I hadn't opened. Total balance. $6,000 more in fraudulent charges. A store credit account at an upscale jewelry store. $5,000 in purchases. Men's watches. Diamond earrings. A bracelet. Jessica had been systematically stealing my identity for months, maybe longer. Every time I checked my credit, she must have opened something new. Like a parasite slowly draining its host. I also noticed small charges on my actual debit card that I hadn't made. Coffee shops in Jessica's neighborhood. Gas stations near her house. Grocery stores I'd never been to. She'd cloned my card. Or stolen my card number somehow. The total fraudulent debt. $49,000. Almost $50,000 stolen from me using my own identity. I filed more police reports, changed every password, canceled cards, set up two-factor authentication on everything, called the credit bureaus, and placed fraud freezes. Then Caroline did something I didn't expect. She had me document every single time my family had asked for money, every excuse they'd used, every lie they'd told. We created a timeline spanning 5 years. This shows pattern and intent, Caroline explained. It proves this wasn't a one-time mistake. This was calculated, sustained exploitation. That evening, Jessica showed up at my apartment building. The doorman called up first, asking if I wanted her sent up. No. Tell her to leave. But I could hear her shouting in the background. The doorman, a kind older man named George, came back on the line. Miss Hartford, she's causing a scene. Should I call the police? Yes, please. I watched from my window 10 floors up as Jessica was escorted out by building security. She looked up at my window, screaming words I couldn't hear but could imagine. George stood between her and the door until she finally left. My phone exploded with messages. Jessica, you called the cops on me? Your own sister? You're insane. Mom, how dare you have your sister removed by security? She just wanted to talk. Aunt Helen, you've gone too far, Maggie. Way too far. I blocked more numbers. Then a letter arrived by courier. From an attorney, not mine, representing my parents. They were threatening to sue me for emotional distress and defamation of character. The letter claimed I was spreading lies about them, damaging their reputation in the community, causing Dad's blood pressure to spike. I forwarded it to Caroline. She called me 30 minutes later, and I could hear laughter in her voice. These are empty threats. They have no case whatsoever. They're trying to intimidate you into backing down. Don't let them. What if they actually sue? They won't. They can't afford to. And any halfway competent attorney would tell them it's frivolous. This is psychological warfare, Maggie. Stay strong. But staying strong was getting harder. My workplace received a phone call that week. Someone claiming to be my mother told the receptionist that I was having a mental breakdown and needed emergency medical leave. My boss, Sharon, called me into her office. I'd been dreading this conversation. Surely they'd want to distance themselves from my drama. Instead, Sharon closed the door and said, "Someone called pretending to be your emergency contact. They said you were mentally unstable and shouldn't be working. I told them we handle all personnel matters internally and hung up. What's going on, Maggie?" I broke down and told her everything. The fraud, the family exploitation, the police reports, all of it. Sharon listened without interrupting. When I finished, she handed me a tissue and said, "Take whatever time you need. Your job is secure. We support you." And document that phone call. That's harassment. I cried from relief. That night, alone in my apartment, I finally broke down completely, sobbed for hours. Mourned the family I'd thought I had. The parents who were supposed to protect me, but instead had used me. The sister who should have been my best friend, but saw me as a resource to exploit. The doorbell rang around 8. I almost didn't answer. But when I checked the peephole, I saw Grandmother Dorothy standing there with a container of soup. I opened the door and fell into her arms. She held me while I cried, made me eat the soup, sat with me on the couch, and stroked my hair like I was a child again. "Your grandfather went through something similar with his own family," Dorothy said quietly. "His brothers tried to steal from him when his father died, forged his signature on estate documents. He had to take them to court. What happened? He won. But he had to cut them off completely. It was the hardest thing he ever did, but also the most necessary. How did he survive it? He built a new family, found people who loved him for who he was, not what he could provide. You'll do the same, sweetheart." Then Dorothy told me something that made me cry all over again. "I've been setting money aside for you. Your grandfather and I started when you graduated college. We always worried about how your parents and Jessica treated you. We saw them using you, and we felt helpless to stop it. Grandma, there's $18,000 in an account with your name on it. We were going to give it to you on your 35th birthday, but you need it now. I can't take your money. It's yours. It's always been yours. We saved it specifically for you. She pulled out a folder with account information, and I have something else. She produced 3 notebooks, old composition books with worn covers. I've been documenting everything for 5 years. Every time they asked you for money, every excuse they used, every manipulation tactic. I wrote it all down with dates and amounts. I kept detailed notes because I knew someday you might need proof. I stared at the notebooks. 5 years of evidence. Why didn't you say anything? I should have. I was a coward. I wanted to keep peace in the family. But peace built on your suffering isn't real peace. I'm sorry I didn't protect you sooner. We hugged for a long time. The next day, Caroline called with an update. The bank has completed their investigation. All fraudulent charges will be removed from your credit report. You'll be enrolled in their Identity Theft Victims Assistance Program. They'll help you rebuild your credit score. How long will that take? 6 months to a year typically. But they've flagged your file with special protections. No one can open new accounts in your name without enhanced verification now. It was something. A small victory in an ocean of pain. Then came the news I'd been dreading and expecting. Jessica had been arrested. Jessica's arraignment happened on a rainy Tuesday morning. I didn't attend, but Caroline did. She called me afterward with an update. She pleaded not guilty. Claims everything was a misunderstanding, that you gave her permission verbally to use your credit. That's a lie. We have text messages proving otherwise. The prosecution is confident. This will likely go to trial. 2 days later, the story hit the local news. Local woman charged with identity theft of sister. My phone exploded again, but this time from people I'd never met. Friends of family members, people from my parents' church, extended relatives I barely knew. Aunt Helen left a voicemail so vicious I had to delete it halfway through. Uncle Frank sent an email calling me vindictive and cruel. Cousin Derek posted on Facebook about how some people value money over family, clearly directed at me, though he didn't use my name. The comments on his post were brutal. People I'd never met calling me heartless, greedy, a bad sister, a terrible daughter. My coworker Amanda found the post and showed it to me. You need to respond, Maggie. You need to tell your side. I created a Facebook post, kept it simple and factual. For the record, I am the victim of identity theft and financial fraud exceeding $49,000. The legal system will determine the outcome based on evidence and facts. I will not be commenting further on an ongoing legal matter. I attach screenshots of the credit reports showing the fraudulent accounts. Police report numbers. Bank documentation with sensitive information redacted. The response was immediate. The tide of public opinion shifted. Comments started supporting me instead of attacking me. Then Grandmother Dorothy did something that shocked everyone. She posted her own statement on Facebook. I've watched my granddaughter Maggie be exploited and manipulated by family members for years. I stayed silent to keep the peace. That was wrong. Maggie is showing incredible courage by standing up for herself. She is the victim here. The rest of you should be ashamed of yourselves for attacking a woman who was stolen from. I have 5 years of documented evidence of this exploitation, and I will provide it to anyone who continues to harass my granddaughter. She posted photos of her notebooks, pages filled with dates, amounts, and descriptions of every time I'd been manipulated into giving money. Uncle Frank called her immediately. I was at her house when the call came through, and she put it on speaker. Mom, what are you doing? You're making the whole family look bad. You are bad, Frank. All of you participated. All of you benefited from exploiting Maggie. That's not true. We never asked her for anything. 3 years ago, Jessica borrowed $2,000 from me and never repaid it. 2 years ago, Helen borrowed $5,000. None of you have any room to talk about financial responsibility. The line went silent. Then Uncle Frank sputtered something about that being different and hung up. More revelations started coming out. A message arrived in my Facebook inbox from someone named Amy. "Hi, Maggie. I'm Brandon's sister. We've never met. Brandon told me everything that's been happening. I'm horrified. I had no idea Jessica was doing any of this. Brandon thought you were wealthy and happily helping family. He never knew about the fraud or the manipulation. He's filing for divorce. He wants full custody of the kids. I thought you should know he's on your side." Another message came from Tiffany, one of Jessica's friends from the text messages. "I need to tell you something, and I should have said it a long time ago. Last year, Jessica borrowed $3,000 from me. She said it was for medical bills for one of the kids. She never paid me back. When I asked about the money, she said her rich sister gave her money so she didn't need to worry about paying me. She used your name to get out of her debt to me. I'm so sorry. I'm willing to testify if it helps your case." The pattern became crystal clear. Jessica hadn't just defrauded me. She'd used my perceived wealth to scam other people too. Caroline compiled everything, added it to our case file. This strengthens our position significantly, shows a pattern of fraudulent behavior beyond just you. The prosecutor's office added additional charges: wire fraud, conspiracy to commit identity theft. The charges against my parents for the loans from 5 years ago were also moving forward. Then my parents sent me a cease and desist letter through their attorney, demanding I stop harassing them and spreading lies about their character. Caroline's response was swift and professional. "My client is cooperating with law enforcement regarding crimes committed against her. This is not harassment. This is the justice system functioning as intended." The discovery phase of the trial began. I had to provide testimony, sitting in a small conference room with lawyers and a court reporter. It was excruciating. Jessica's defense attorney tried every angle. "Isn't it true you've always been jealous of your sister?" "No, I loved my sister. I wanted her to have a good life." "Isn't it true you make a substantial salary and could easily afford to help your family?" "I make $72,000 annually before taxes. After taxes, rent, student loans, and basic living expenses, I have very little disposable income. The $15,000 I gave voluntarily over 2 years significantly impacted my financial stability. The additional $49,000 in fraud was stolen without my knowledge or consent. Your parents raised you, clothed you, fed you. Don't you have an obligation to help them in return? Parents have a legal obligation to care for their minor children. I don't owe them financial compensation for fulfilling their basic parental duties. And helping families should be voluntary, not achieved through identity theft and fraud." The defense attorney tried to frame it as cultural norms about family obligation. Caroline shut that down immediately. In American law, regardless of cultural norms, identity theft is a crime. Fraud is a crime. Opening credit cards in someone else's name without permission is a crime. The defendant's attempt to frame criminal behavior as family duty is inappropriate and irrelevant. During a lunch break, I saw my mother in the courthouse hallway. Our eyes met. Barbara's face was hard, cold, furious. She walked over to me, and I instinctively stepped back. Caroline moved to stand between us. "You've ruined us," Mom hissed. "I hope you're happy. I hope destroying your own family was worth it." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "I didn't destroy anything. You did. You destroyed my trust, my credit, my financial future. You chose to commit crimes. I chose to stop being a victim. We're your parents. We gave you life. You gave me life, and then spent years taking from it. That's not love. That's exploitation." Dad appeared from around the corner, looking smaller and older than I remembered, defeated. "Maggie," he said quietly, "please, can't we work this out? Family doesn't do this to each other." Something in his voice cracked through my anger. "Just for a moment. You're right, Dad. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't commit fraud. Family doesn't destroy each other's credit and then demand gratitude. But you did all of that. We made mistakes. Mistakes happen once. This was deliberate, sustained for years. His eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. It was the first real apology I'd heard from either of them. It didn't fix anything, didn't undo the damage, but it was something. I needed to hear that 5 years ago. Before the loans, before you let Jessica steal my identity, before you taught her that I was just a resource to be used. I didn't know about the credit cards, he said weakly. But you knew about the loans. You co-signed them using my information. You knew exactly what you were doing. He couldn't meet my eyes, turned and walked away. The trial date was set for 6 weeks later. In the meantime, Jessica's attorney approached the prosecutor with a plea deal. The offer: Jessica pleads guilty to reduced charges, pays full restitution, 5 years probation, no jail time. The prosecutor called me into her office. It's your case, ultimately. We can go to trial and likely win, which could mean significant prison time for your sister. Or we can accept the plea. I need your input. I thought about my niece and nephew, 7 and 5 years old. They hadn't asked for any of this. They didn't deserve to grow up visiting their mother in prison. But I also thought about what Caroline had said. About consequences. About the fact that without them, Jessica would do this to someone else. What about the money? Full restitution is non-negotiable in any deal. She'll be required to pay back every dollar with interest. All $49,000? The credit card charges are separate from your parents' loan fraud. But yes, Jessica will owe for all the fraudulent charges she personally made. Your parents will be responsible for the loan amounts in their separate case. I looked out the prosecutor's window at the city beyond. Thought about everything that had brought me to this moment. No plea deal, I said finally. I want to go to trial. If she's truly sorry, she can show that by accepting the consequences of her actions. Caroline, sitting next to me, nodded approvingly. The prosecutor smiled slightly. All right then, let's proceed to trial. The trial began on a cold Monday in November. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined from TV shows. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, uncomfortable benches. Jessica sat at the defense table in a conservative blue dress, her hair pulled back, looking young and scared. I took the stand first, testified about the fraud, the stolen credit cards, the years of manipulation. I kept my voice steady, factual, unemotional, just told the truth. Jessica's defense attorney tried to paint me as vindictive. Miss Hartford, isn't it true you resented your sister's marriage and children? No. I was happy for her. Isn't it true you make substantially more money than your sister and could easily afford to help her? I make a middle-class income. After mandatory expenses, I have little left over. The money I gave voluntarily significantly impacted my ability to save for my own future. The money taken through fraud devastated my financial stability and credit. The bank representative testified next, showed the fraudulent applications, the forged signatures. Patricia from Fraud Prevention was clear and professional. The handwriting analysis conclusively shows the signatures on these applications were not made by Miss Hartford. They match samples provided by the defendant. Courtney testified, bringing printed copies of the text messages where Jessica bragged about scamming me. Reading those messages aloud in court, hearing Jessica's words about me being stupid and gullible, made my chest tight. Tiffany testified about the $3,000 Jessica borrowed and never repaid, using my supposed wealth as an excuse. The evidence was overwhelming. Jessica's attorney looked increasingly desperate as witness after witness confirmed the fraud. Then something happened I hadn't expected. During the lunch recess on the second day, Jessica's attorney requested an emergency conference with the judge and prosecutor. When court resumed, there was an announcement. Jessica wanted to change her plea. In exchange for testifying against our parents in their separate fraud case, she would plead guilty to reduced charges. The judge asked if she understood what this meant. "Yes, Your Honor," Jessica said, her voice small. "You understand that by pleading guilty, you're admitting to these crimes?" "Yes." "And you understand you'll be required to testify truthfully about your parents' involvement?" "Yes." The judge accepted the plea. Then Jessica took the stand, and my entire world tilted. "Miss Hartford," the prosecutor began, "tell the court how this fraud began." Jessica's voice shook. "My mother came up with the idea when I was pregnant with my first child. She said Maggie was single, had no kids, made good money. She said we deserved that money more than Maggie did, because we had a family to support." Ice formed in my veins. "Your mother told you to defraud your sister?" "Not fraud at first. At first it was just asking for money, making up emergencies. Mom would coach me on what to say, what stories would work best. She said to play up the kids. That Maggie was a sucker for anything involving the kids." I sat frozen in the gallery, unable to breathe. "When did it escalate to identity theft?" "About 3 years ago. Mom said asking wasn't enough. We needed more. She's the one who got Maggie's social security number. She told Maggie it was for taxes, that there was some dependent claiming issue. Maggie trusted her and handed over the card. And the loans from 5 years ago? That was all Mom and Dad. They wanted to remodel their kitchen. Dad's construction business was struggling financially. They applied for loans using Maggie's information and credit. My father, sitting several rows behind me, made a choked sound. "Did your sister know about any of this?" "No. Maggie had no idea. She trusted us. That's what made it so easy." The words hit like physical blows. So easy. Because I'd trusted them. "Why did you continue?" Jessica's voice cracked. "Because it worked. And because I was jealous. Maggie got to go to college, have a career, have freedom. I got pregnant at 20, married at 21. I felt trapped in my life. Taking her money felt like getting back what I'd missed out on, like evening the score." "Did you feel guilty?" Tears streamed down Jessica's face. I tried not to think about it. I told myself she could afford it, that she owed us for being the lucky one. But yes, deep down, I knew it was wrong. "Do you feel guilty now?" "I destroyed my sister's life. Her credit, her trust, her relationship with our family, for purses and vacations and stupid things I didn't even need. She looked directly at me for the first time. "I'm so sorry, Maggie. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know you probably hate me, but I'm sorry." The apology felt genuine, but it was years too late, decades too late. My parents' trial happened the following week. Barbara took the stand in her own defense, trying to maintain that she'd only been helping her struggling daughter, that I had plenty of money and should have been helping family anyway. The prosecutor presented my bank statements. Miss Hartford had $2,300 in savings when the fraud was discovered. Does that sound like plenty of money? She makes $70,000 a year. She should have more saved. Where should she have that money if she's paying rent, student loans, car payment, insurance, groceries, and giving thousands to family members regularly? Mom had no answer. Grandmother Dorothy testified, bringing her notebooks. 5 years of documentation. Every manipulation tactic. Every false emergency. Every lie. I watched my daughter and one granddaughter systematically exploit my other granddaughter. I documented it because I knew someday Maggie would need proof that this wasn't normal. This wasn't love. This was abuse. Why didn't you intervene? Dorothy's voice broke. I was afraid of causing family conflict. I thought if I stayed quiet, eventually they'd stop on their own. I was wrong. I should have protected Maggie years ago. She looked at me across the courtroom. I'm sorry I failed you, sweetheart. Closing arguments laid out the evidence clearly. The defense tried to frame it as a family misunderstanding. The prosecution called it what it was: systematic fraud and exploitation. The jury for Jessica's case returned first. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing: 5 years in prison, suspended to 2 years with 3 years probation afterward. Full restitution of $14,000 to me? The judge was harsh. You exploited your own sister's love and trust. You showed no remorse until facing prison time. You bragged about your crimes to friends. You will serve time to understand the gravity of what you've done. Jessica sobbed as she was led away. Brandon sat in the gallery, his face blank. We made eye contact briefly. He nodded once. An acknowledgement. My parents pleaded guilty rather than face trial. Their sentencing was quicker. 3 years probation each. Full restitution of $35,000 for the fraudulent loans. 200 hours of community service. The judge didn't hold back. You were her parents. Your job was to protect her, nurture her, prepare her for life. Instead, you taught your other daughter to exploit her. You destroyed her credit for kitchen cabinets and vacations. You treated your own child as a resource to be mined. I'm disgusted by your behavior. In the courthouse hallway afterward, extended families scattered like roaches when the lights come on. Nobody wanted to be associated with the convicted criminals. Aunt Helen approached me one last time. Are you happy now? You've destroyed everyone. Grandmother Dorothy, standing beside me as always, stepped between us. Helen, stop. We all enabled this abuse. Maggie was the only one brave enough to make it stop. She sent her own sister to prison. Jessica sent herself to prison when she committed multiple felonies. Maggie just refused to be a victim anymore. I walked away without responding. I didn't owe Helen anything. Not explanations. Not justification. Not my presence. Outside the courthouse, Caroline put a hand on my shoulder. You did it. Justice was served. I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty, sad, exhausted, but also lighter somehow, like I'd been carrying a massive weight for years and had finally been allowed to set it down. What happens now? I asked. Now you rebuild. On your own terms, with the people who actually love you. I looked at Grandmother Dorothy standing beside me, her hand warm in mine. At Caroline, who'd fought for me when my own family wouldn't. At the prosecutor, who'd taken my case seriously. Maybe Caroline was right. Maybe I could build something new. 6 months later, I sat in my new apartment sipping morning coffee. The place was smaller than my old one, but every piece of furniture I'd bought myself. No help from anyone, no strings attached. Just mine. My credit score had climbed 90 points. The identity theft had been completely removed from my record. I'd qualified for a secured credit card and was using it carefully to rebuild my credit properly. Small purchases, paid off in full every month. Building a foundation of trust with myself. The restitution payments had started. $50 a month from Jessica, garnished from her prison job wages. $100 a month from my parents, taken directly from Dad's paycheck. At this rate, it would take years to recover all $49,000. But it was happening. Slowly, but steadily. Dorothy visited every Sunday. We'd have coffee and talk about books, gardening, her memories of Grandpa, my plans for the future. We never talked about the trial unless I brought it up first. She followed my lead, let me process in my own time. Today she brought news over cinnamon rolls she'd baked. Your Uncle Frank and Aunt Helen are getting divorced. Apparently Helen had been hiding credit card debt from him. $15,000. He only found out when debt collectors started calling. The patterns repeat through generations. The same financial dishonesty, the same secrets and lies. Brandon finalized his divorce from Jessica last month, Dorothy continued. He has full custody of the kids. He wanted me to tell you that if you ever want to meet your niece and nephew, he's open to supervised visits. No pressure, just whenever you're ready. I thought about 7-year-old Lily. and 5-year-old Noah. They were innocent in all this, but I wasn't ready yet. Maybe someday. I'll think about it, I said. Therapy had been helping. Dr. Sarah, my therapist, met with me every Thursday evening. She'd helped me understand that I wasn't responsible for my family's choices. You were conditioned from childhood to be the caretaker, Dr. Sarah had explained in one session. The responsible one. The giver. They trained you to feel guilty for having boundaries. Unlearning that conditioning takes time. I still feel guilty sometimes. Is that normal? Completely normal. Healing isn't linear. Some days will be harder than others. I joined a support group for survivors of family financial abuse. Sitting in that church basement on Tuesday nights, listening to others share their stories, I'd realized I wasn't alone. A woman named Emily had a mother who'd opened 17 credit cards in her name. A man named David had siblings who'd stolen his inheritance. A young woman named Rachel had parents who'd taken out student loans in her name and kept the money. We were all rebuilding, all learning that family is supposed to lift you up, not tear you down. Through Emily, I'd started building a real community. We got coffee on weekends and talked about books, hiking trails, dreams for the future. Never about money unless one of us needed support. Through Emily, I met others. People who respected boundaries, who reciprocated care, who understood that love shouldn't cost everything you have. Work had been good, really good. Sharon had promoted me to Director of Marketing 3 months ago. The promotion came with a $15,000 raise. I hadn't told my family. That information was mine to keep. I'd opened a new savings account at a different bank, set up automatic transfers every payday, watched my emergency fund grow week by week. I also started investing for the first time. Small amounts in a retirement account, building toward a future that was finally mine. The doorbell rang one evening in March. I checked the camera. My father stood there looking older, grayer, tired. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity made me open the door. I didn't invite him in. I've been trying to call, Thomas said. I blocked your number. I know. I deserved that. He held out an envelope. This is for you. If it's money, the court is handling restitution. It's a letter. I've been seeing a counselor. For my enabling behavior. The financial abuse. She suggested I write this to you. I took the envelope, but didn't open it. Your mother and I are selling the house, he said. The house you remodeled with my stolen credit? He flinched. Yes. We're downsizing to a small condo. We're using the proceeds to pay you back faster. It won't erase what we did, but it's something. Why now? Why do you suddenly care? Because I lost my daughter. Both my daughters. Jessica is in prison. You want nothing to do with us. I realized too late that money never mattered. Family mattered. And I destroyed it for kitchen cabinets and pride. Something shifted in my chest. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe never. But acknowledgement. I appreciate the letter and the effort. But I'm not ready for a relationship with you. I may never be ready. I understand. But maybe someday? Maybe. On my terms. With very clear boundaries. If that day comes. He nodded, eyes shining with unshed tears, and left. I read the letter later that night. It was 6 pages long, handwritten, detailed. He acknowledged every failure, every time he'd stood silent while Mom manipulated me, every loan he'd co-signed using my identity. He apologized without making excuses or asking for forgiveness. It didn't fix anything, but it was honest. I filed it away in a folder labeled Family. Maybe someday I'd respond. Today wasn't that day. Jessica sent letters from prison. They arrived every few weeks, forwarded through Caroline's office, so Jessica didn't have my address. I hadn't opened any of them yet. They sat in a box in my closet. Maybe someday I'd be strong enough to read them. Not today. But I did reach out to Brandon in April. We met at a park on a Saturday morning with Dorothy present as a buffer. Lily and Noah were shy at first, hiding behind their father's legs. This is your Aunt Maggie, Brandon said gently. Lily, now 8 years old, peeked out at me. Daddy says you're very strong and brave. My eyes stung with tears. I try to be. Noah, 6 now, held out a piece of paper. I made this for you. It was a crayon drawing of a rainbow, bright colors arcing across white paper. I knelt down to his level. This is beautiful. Thank you. Rainbows come after storms, he said solemnly. Daddy told me. I looked up at Brandon. He gave me a small, sad smile. We spent an hour at the park. The kids played on the swings while Brandon and I talked. Thank you for giving me a chance to let them know you, he said. They need good role models, people who stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. I'm just trying to heal. You're doing more than that. You're showing them what real strength looks like, what boundaries look like, what self-respect looks like. I kept Noah's rainbow drawing on my refrigerator. A reminder that storms end, that beauty comes after darkness. 1 year after that restaurant dinner, after the bill that changed everything, I sat in Dr. Sarah's office for my regular Thursday appointment. How are you doing? She asked. Really doing? I'm okay. Really, genuinely okay. Not just saying it. What's changed? I thought about it. I know my worth now. It's not measured by what I can give people or how much I can tolerate. It's inherent. I matter because I exist, not because I'm useful. Dr. Sarah smiled. That's beautiful growth, Maggie. I learned that real love shouldn't cost everything I have. It should add to my life, not drain it. Real love lifts you up. It doesn't leave you empty. I thought about my chosen family, Emily and the support group members, my coworkers who'd supported me through everything, Dorothy who'd finally stood up for me when it mattered, Brandon who was letting me build a relationship with the kids on my terms, Caroline who'd fought for me fiercely. These people reciprocated. They cared without expecting me to bankrupt myself. They saw me as a person, not a resource. I'd learned to say no without guilt, to set boundaries without apology, to prioritize my own well-being without shame. My savings account had $8,000 now. My credit score was climbing steadily toward good. I was planning a vacation to Colorado in June, a real vacation, just for me, hiking and mountains and peace. I'd been accepted to a part-time graduate program in marketing strategy. Classes started in September. I'd gotten a partial scholarship. Life wasn't perfect. I still had hard days. Still grieved the family I'd wanted but never really had. Still felt twinges of guilt that I had to actively talk myself through. But I was building something real. Something that wouldn't collapse under the weight of exploitation and lies. I wrote in my journal that night, I learned that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who choose to love you properly. I learned that boundaries aren't selfish. They're survival. They're self-respect. I learned that my worth isn't in my wallet or my usefulness. It's in my heart, my strength, my refusal to be diminished by people who should have protected me. I learned that justice sometimes looks like walking away, like pressing charges against people you love, like saying no and meaning it. Like choosing yourself when everyone tells you you're selfish for doing so. I learned that I deserve better than crumbs and manipulation, and I'm brave enough to demand it, to build it, to protect it fiercely. I closed the journal and looked around my small apartment, at Emily's book recommendations stacked on my coffee table, at the photos on my wall of my support group friends, at Dorothy's plant she'd given me, thriving on the windowsill, at Noah's rainbow on my refrigerator, at my reflection in the mirror across the room. I saw someone strong, someone worthy, someone free. The life lesson had settled deep in my bones. You teach people how to treat you. For 32 years, I'd taught my family I was a doormat, an ATM, a resource to be used. Then I'd spent 1 year teaching the world I was a force, a person, someone who matters. And that made all the difference. I still had healing to do. still had mountains to climb. But I was climbing them on my own terms, with people who actually loved me walking beside me instead of weighing me down. That was worth everything. So here's my question for you. Have you ever felt like you were giving everything to people who gave nothing back? Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping yourself whole? What would you do if you discovered family members were using you? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please consider giving it a like. It helps others who might need to hear this message find it. And if you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button for more stories about courage, boundaries, and choosing yourself. Share this with someone who might need the reminder that their worth isn't measured by their usefulness. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it reminded you that you deserve to be loved properly, not drained dry. You deserve people who see you as a person, not a resource. And you deserve to choose yourself, even when it's the hardest thing you've ever done. Take care of yourselves. Set those boundaries. Choose people who choose you back. And remember, you matter. Not because of what you can give, but because you exist. Until next time.